The house was unusually quiet that night. The kind of silence that pressed against Emily's chest and made her feel restless. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts wandering in every direction. James, her husband, was away on a business trip, leaving her alone with his son. Alex. Normally, she felt comfortable in the quiet, but tonight something felt different. She had always liked Alex, treated him like her own son, but lately, she noticed subtle changes in his behavior, a lingering glance. A pause when he spoke to her, something almost imperceptible yet persistent. Emily shook her head, trying to convince herself she was imagining things. The night stretched on, and sleep refused to come. She heard the wind brushing against the windows, the soft hum of the refrigerator, and then whisper, "Emily." Her heart jumped. It was barely audible, soft, hesitant, yet strangely intimate. She sat up quickly, her pulse racing. "Alex?" she whispered, unsure if she had actually heard him. The hallway outside her room lay in shadows, the pale moonlight spilling in through the curtains. Every creak of the old house made her jump, and she held her breath, straining to hear anything. A knock followed, soft but definite, at her bedroom door. Her mind raced. Who else could it be? She whispered his name again, but no answer came. The house seemed impossibly still, as though it were holding its breath with her. She rose cautiously, every step careful, her bare feet brushing against the carpet. The door creaked as she opened it slowly, expecting. What exactly? A playful prank. A dream made real. Nothing. The hallway was empty, and the moonlight cast long, twisting shadows that made the familiar corridor feel strange and unfamiliar. Emily's heart thudded against her ribs, a mixture of fear, curiosity, something she could barely name. Her mind spun, trying to rationalize what she'd heard. Could it have been a dream? Had fatigue made her imagine Alex's voice calling her name? She tried to shake it off, telling herself that it was just the house settling, just her imagination running wild. Yet, deep down, she couldn't ignore the feeling that something had shifted. There was a new tension, a charged energy in the air, like the calm before a storm. She felt both anxious and inexplicably drawn to the idea of what or who was out there in the shadows. Emily returned to bed, her body tense, her mind unwilling to rest. Every creak, every whisper of the wind made her flinch. She imagined Alex standing in the doorway, hesitant, unsure, carrying something he couldn't yet express. The thought made her chest tighten. She remembered all the small moments over the past weeks, the way he lingered in conversation, the way his eyes met hers for just a second longer than necessary, the subtle gestures that now seemed loaded with meaning. Maybe it wasn't imagination. Maybe he really did call her name, testing the boundary between them, testing her reaction. Hours passed slowly. Emily lay awake, tangled in sheets, her thoughts a storm of confusion and anticipation. She didn't understand why her heart beat faster when she thought of him, or why the idea of Alex standing in her doorway felt both alarming and magnetic. There was a thrill in the unknown, in the subtle danger of feelings that hadn't yet been defined. The house seemed to watch her, its shadows shifting as if aware of the tension growing inside her. By the time dawn began to break, Emily was exhausted, drained, yet strangely alert. She knew that nothing in her life or in her quiet house would ever feel the same again. Something had changed overnight, something delicate and dangerous. And she felt the first stirring of emotions that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, family, and desire. The quiet had ended, replaced by a tension that promised secrets, confessions, and unexpected connections that neither she nor Alex were prepared to face. The next morning, Emily tried to convince herself that the previous night had been a dream. She forced herself into the kitchen, started the coffee, and went about her routine. But the memory of Alex's whisper clung to her mind like a shadow. At breakfast, he sat across from her, unusually quiet. His usual chatter and teasing were gone, replaced by a nervous fidgeting with his spoon. Emily noticed the way he avoided her eyes, glancing down at the table or staring out the window. It made her chest tighten. Something had changed between them. She could feel it even in the ordinary gestures of breakfast. After a long pause, Alex finally spoke. I wanted to talk to you, he said softly, barely above a whisper. His words made Emily freeze, her heart suddenly racing. She set her cup down, keeping her voice calm, though inside she was tense. Okay, what is it? She asked, trying to sound casual, though she already knew it wouldn't be simple. Alex hesitated, his hands curling around his chair. There was a vulnerability in his stance, a raw honesty that made Emily lean in slightly. I know this might sound weird, but I care about you more than I should. I think about you a lot. The words tumbled out, shaky, almost apologetic, but filled with sincerity. Emily's mind went blank for a moment. She had always seen Alex as her stepson, her responsibility, someone she loved in a protective, maternal way, but hearing him admit feelings that went beyond that struck a chord deep inside her. She exhaled slowly, trying to steady her racing heart. Alex, feelings are complicated. You're growing up and sometimes emotions get mixed up. But we have to be careful. Her voice was gentle, soft, but firm, setting a boundary she knew needed to exist. Yet even as she said it, she felt a strange warmth, a pull she couldn't ignore. His confession had stirred something in her, a quiet curiosity, a recognition of connection she hadn't expected to feel. Alex nodded, relief and tension mixed in his eyes. I know. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I had to tell you. There was honesty in his words, and Emily felt a pang of sympathy and concern. He was young, confused, and full of emotions he didn't fully understand. She wanted to guide him, protect him, but also acknowledge that their bond had shifted in ways neither of them were ready to confront fully. As the day went on, Emily found herself stealing glances at Alex, noticing little things, the way he smiled when no one was watching, the intensity in his gaze, the subtle hesitations when he spoke to her. Each moment was a mixture of tension and tenderness, a dance they didn't know the steps to. She wondered if she was imagining things, letting her own emotions cloud her judgment. But she couldn't deny the pull she felt. There was a connection there, fragile and confusing, but undeniably real. Later, as the sun dipped and shadows lengthened in the living room, Emily and Alex found themselves sitting closer than usual, pretending to read, but neither could concentrate. Their conversation drifted, words soft and careful, revealing glimpses of their emotions without fully exposing them. Emily felt her heart tighten with every hesitant glance he threw her way, and she realized that their bond was becoming something far more complex than she had anticipated by nightfall. The tension had grown unbearable. Emily lay awake again, thinking of the confession, of the intensity in Alex's eyes, and this strange, unspoken connection that lingered between them. Her mind raced with possibilities, fears, and forbidden curiosities. The night felt alive, charged, and she knew that the dynamics of their relationship had changed forever. Something unspoken was waiting to surface, and neither of them could pretend it wasn't there. As she finally drifted into uneasy sleep, Emily understood that their bond had passed a point of no return. Feelings had been admitted, boundaries tested, and a complicated, delicate connection had been established. The whisper at midnight had been just the beginning of emotions that would challenge them both, drawing them into a world of longing, confusion, and unexpected closeness. The house was quiet again, the kind of silence that made every creak and rustle feel louder than it really was. Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts tangled with Alex's confession from days earlier. She couldn't stop replaying his words, the intensity in his eyes, and the strange pull she felt whenever he was near. Her heart beat faster at the memory of his soft voice, and a mixture of anxiety and anticipation made it impossible to sleep. Every shadow in the room seemed to stretch closer. Then every flicker of moonlight felt like it was highlighting her own restless thoughts. Then soft footsteps. Her breath caught instantly. They were deliberate, hesitant, moving closer. Emily froze under the sheets, unsure if she should call out or pretend to be asleep. The door to her room creaked open slowly, and she held her breath, every nerve alert. There he was, Alex, standing in the doorway, his eyes wide, searching for reassurance. He looked nervous, vulnerable, a side of him she hadn't fully seen before. Her chest tightened, and for a moment she wondered if she should ask him to leave. But the quiet tension in the air made her hesitate. "I couldn't sleep," he whispered, his voice soft, almost trembling. "I just needed to see you." The words were simple, but there was a raw honesty in them that made Emily's heart skip. She felt a strange pull toward him, a mix of concern and curiosity that she couldn't ignore. Slowly she said, "Come closer. But we must be careful." Her voice was gentle, calm, yet underlined with a thrill she couldn't explain. Alex stepped forward, his movements careful, as if he feared breaking some invisible rule. His hand brushed against hers briefly, a fleeting touch that sent shivers down her spine. The air between them was charged, heavy with unspoken feelings and the weight of the night. For a moment, time seemed to stop, and Emily could feel the quiet heartbeat of the house around them, echoing the rhythm of her own pulse. He hesitated, then leaned slightly closer, eyes searching hers for permission, understanding. Any hint that he wasn't overstepping? Emily's heart raced. She wanted to pull away, yet something inside her whispered that this moment was significant, delicate, and fragile. Their closeness was not bold or reckless, it was tender, full of emotion and careful exploration of the bond forming between them. She could sense his longing, his confusion, and his quiet trust. And it made her feel protective. Aware of the complicated feelings swirling between them, Alex finally did something unexpected. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, a small tentative gesture. But it carried a weight that neither of them could ignore. It was gentle, respectful, and almost reverent. Emily felt her entire world shift in that instant. Her mind raced, her heart tightened, and a strange, quiet thrill ran through her. The connection between them had deepened in a way that words couldn't describe. It was emotional, intimate, and charged with tension. Yet without crossing any overt boundaries, they stood there in silence, the room heavy with emotion. Every movement, every glance, every breath was amplified in the stillness of the night. Emily's mind spun with the possibilities, the risks, the intensity of the bond they were forming. She realized that this night would change everything. Their relationship, once simple and familiar, had taken on a complexity neither of them was prepared for. But both felt drawn toward. When Alex finally stepped back, the moment didn't feel like an ending. It was a beginning, a quiet turning point that promised more, yet demanded patience, care, and courage. Emily lay awake long after he returned to his room, replaying every detail, feeling the warmth of his hand on her shoulder still lingering, and understanding that the unspoken connection between them had reached a new, undeniable depth. The next morning, Emily woke with a fluttering heart. The memory of Alex's midnight visit haunted her thoughts, replaying every moment with sharp clarity. She couldn't meet his eyes at breakfast, though she noticed the way he glanced at her, cautious and hopeful, as if waiting for her reaction. The air between them felt charged, quiet but heavy with unspoken feelings. Every small gesture, every accidental brush of hands now carried weight. Emily struggled with the confusing emotions swirling inside her protectiveness, curiosity, and something deeper she hadn't expected to feel. Over the following days, Emily and Alex navigated a delicate balance. They spoke carefully, their words measured, yet every conversation seemed to linger on emotions they didn't dare name aloud. He would offer her small gestures, a shared smile, a glance held too long, or a thoughtful comment, and she would feel an inexplicable pull toward him. Emily caught herself thinking about him constantly, remembering the tenderness in his voice, the intensity in his eyes, and the quiet honesty he carried. She knew this was more than a fleeting moment. It was the start of something complex and undeniable. One evening, as the golden light of sunset filled the living room, Alex handed Emily a small note. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded it, and her eyes scanned the words, "I don't know what this is yet, but I know I trust you more than anyone. I just want you to know how much you mean to me." Her heart swelled with emotion, tears threatening to spill. It was not a declaration of bold love, nor a reckless act. It was simple, sincere, and deeply heartfelt. Emily felt the quiet gravity of their connection, the unspoken trust that had grown between them, stronger than either had anticipated. She looked at Alex, who was watching her nervously, his eyes wide, filled with hope and vulnerability. She felt an overwhelming mixture of protectiveness and longing. His honesty, his tender care, and the depth of his feelings shook something in her. She realized that this bond, complicated as it was, had become an inescapable part of her life. She reached out, touching his hand gently, and whispered, "We'll figure this out." Together, the words felt heavy with meaning, a promise to navigate the uncertainty, the emotions, and the complexity that had quietly taken over their lives. From that day, their dynamic shifted subtly but unmistakably. There was a careful intimacy in their interactions, small gestures, meaningful glances, and shared silences that spoke louder than words. Emily felt both exhilarated and cautious, aware of the emotional lines they were tiptoeing along, yet unable to resist the pull of the connection between them. Alex, for his part, was both tentative and brave, exploring the depth of his feelings while respecting the fragile boundaries that still existed. Night after night, the quiet of the house seemed different. The air carried a sense of possibility, tension, and unspoken promises. Emily lay awake thinking about him, and she realized that love was not always simple or clean. It could be tender, complicated, and confusing, yet powerful enough to redefine everything she thought she knew. The whispered names, the midnight visits, and the small gestures had created a bond neither could ignore, full of emotion and quiet longing. By the end of the week, Emily felt a strange calmness settle over her heart. The fear and uncertainty hadn't disappeared, but they had been joined by trust, closeness, and a shared understanding. She knew challenges lay ahead, that the world might not understand their complicated connection, but she also knew that the bond they shared was real. It was emotional, intense, and deeply humana, love that demanded patience, care, and courage. As she watched Alex from across the room, she realized that the journey they had begun together was only just starting, filled with tenderness, longing, and a quiet hope that, somehow, they would navigate the emotions that had unexpectedly intertwined their lives.